The emergency beacon was already sounding when the transport touched down. Not after, before. While the landing gear was still deploying on a world where the atmosphere itself was classified as hostile. Varn moved his fingers deliberately, watching light refract through crystalline joints that had begun their faint harmonic cracking at 15,000 meters. He was 6 months into his instructor certification. The academy had not prepared him for environments where his biology approached its brittle point. 47 cadets occupied the rear compartment. Varn knew their thermal signatures. Quarry hive minds clustered as one warm mass. Theans diffused their skins near the heating vents. Salvon gripped their harnesses with tension that indicated nausea in 0.9 gravity. Only the Terran registered as anomalous. Juno sat apart near a viewport that had iced over 20 minutes into the descent. She had not moved toward the heating vents. She was humming a low, continuous tone that Varn's audio processors logged as possibly involuntary thermal regulation. The transport settled. The beacon continued its amber pulse. "Equipment check," Varn announced, his voice emerging dry from his vocalization crystals. Cold entered with the doors. Varn felt it in his joints before his sensors registered it, the precise temperature where Threxian structure lost molecular flexibility. He moved deliberately, each step calculated. Juno stood wearing a thin shell layer. She withdrew a flint striker from her pack, its surface polished to a mirror finish in some areas and pitted in others. Primitive combustion technology, 12,000 years obsolete. "You will not require that," Varn said. "Academy protocols specify thermal units. Thermal units need power cells." She rotated the striker in practiced fingers. "Power cells fail at -30. I've seen it. Academy units are rated to -50. "Rated," she said. The hum shifted lower now. "Rated isn't proven. Not here." The doors opened fully. Wind entered with the shriek of an atmosphere at full velocity. Varn's joints emitted harmonic resonance, suggesting operational limits were approaching. "Drill commencement," he announced. "Class 9 blizzard. 6 hours. Establish shelter. Maintain core temperature. Signal for extraction." The cadets exited in assigned order. The beacon continued pulsing behind them. Varn noted it in his log under equipment anomaly and focused on maintaining structural integrity. 400 meters to the first shelter site. Varn reached it in 8 minutes, his joints now emitting significant thermal stress. Juno was already there, having taken no marked path. She stood on the formation's leeward side, examining a frozen tree. "Dead," Varn said. "Useless for thermal purposes." "Not dead." She scraped the bark with a small blade, exposing a fibrous, pale inner layer carrying moisture that should have frozen. "Dormant," she said. "Different process." She sealed the sample and walked past the site toward the tree line, where wind speeds increased and visibility dropped to 12 meters. "Return to designated coordinates." She did not return. The beacon continued pulsing. Varn checked his telemetry. His joints lost flexibility at 4% per minute. He followed 800 meters farther. She had built a windbreak from frozen branches arranged in a specific geometry that his architectural database identified as inefficient. But his fluid dynamics models suggested it redirected airflow 40% better than Academy designs. She sat inside, eating from a small container. "Designated zones are underwater," she said. She offered him the container. "Want some? The cold makes me hungry." Varn declined. His joints crackled audibly, the specific resonance of Threxian biology approaching its limits. She continued eating. Outside, the wind reached 90 kilometers per hour, the velocity at which Academy protocols mandated immediate shelter occupation. 43 minutes into the drill, all 47 cadets had activated their emergency signals. Medical extraction teams were arriving at the landing pad through the automated distress system. Juno scraped snow from her boot with the flint striker. She had not started a fire and had not activated any thermal unit. Her core temperature remained at 37 degrees Celsius. "Cadet Juno," Varn said. His emergency beacon had activated without his conscious decision. His joints were emitting the harmonic range that preceded structural failure. "What is the purpose of your vocalization?" "Purpose?" The wind gusted. She did not brace against it. "I'm not sure I was really thinking about it." The striker caught the light from his beacon. Behind them, medical teams treated hypothermic cases. Ahead, the blizzard built toward Class 10 conditions. She put another piece of food into her mouth and began scraping bark from another frozen tree. Her humming matched the wind's intervals with a precision Varn's processors could no longer classify as coincidence. Varn's emergency beacon pulsed against his thigh, its rhythm matching the harmonic cracking in his joints. He had not authorized its activation. His processors logged it as an involuntary biological distress signal while his attention remained fixed on the Terran, who was scraping frozen bark with a tool that should not function in these conditions. "Medical evacuation is underway," he said. The words emerged with a harmonic overlay indicating vocalization crystal stress. 47 cadets have withdrawn with hypothermic incapacitation. Juno looked up from her bark sample. Her face carried the thermal coloration his training identified as cheerful, though her surface temperature read below freezing and her core had not dropped even 0.1 degree in 43 minutes. "Withdrawn," she said. The words seemed to process through her cognition in a manner Varn could not map. "That's one way to put it." She sealed her container with movements suggesting routine. She checked her chronometer, double-knotted her bootlaces in the particular pattern his database associated with preparation for extended duration, and adjusted her shell layer without urgency. "The beacon," she said, looking toward the landing pad where the amber light continued pulsing through the falling snow. It wasn't malfunctioning. Varn's processors required 0.7 seconds to integrate the statement. His joints emitted a harmonic crack that his training manual classified as imminent structural compromise, though he experienced it as understanding arriving too rapidly for his crystalline structure to accommodate. "The drill was not a drill," he said. The classification emerged as a statement rather than a question. "Live extraction scenario," Juno said. The conditions were real. The 47 weren't failing a test. They were being evacuated from an actual environmental emergency. Cadet 3rd Class Morbith had lived 4,000 standard hours. He drew geological formations in the snow with his thermal stylus, a habit his instructors had noted as attention to detail exceeding curriculum requirements. His crystalline structure could not process the rapid temperature drop. Medical teams found him still holding the stylus, a half-finished mountain range of ice and melting snow crystallizing around his hand. Juno stood. She did not brush the snow from her shell layer, though it had accumulated to depths that would have melted immediately against standard thermal output. She withdrew the flint striker from her pack. Its worn surface caught the light from Varn's emergency beacon. "You knew," Varn said. The classification felt imprecise even as he spoke it. "I knew it was cold," she said. She rotated the striker in practiced fingers. "I didn't know it was a test of the test, but rated isn't proven. Not here. Not with lives." She struck the flint. The spark was visible for 0.3 seconds, a brief orange pulse against the white darkness. It touched the bark sample she had exposed, the inner layer carrying moisture that should have frozen solid at these temperatures but had not, protected by insulation his thermal scans had classified as irrelevant. The bark caught fire. It established itself within the windbreak she had constructed, the inefficient geometry that redirected airflow 40% better than Academy designs. Varn's joints crackled with a specific harmonic range indicating both structural stress and cognitive processing overload. It was not thermal regulation. "Wind intervals," she said, feeding the fire with strips of prepared bark. "Gust cycles. You can hear them coming if you match the frequency. It gives you about 3 seconds to brace or feed the fire before the wind hits." Varn's audio processors retrieved his previous log entry. Subject exhibits continuous low-frequency vocalization, possibly involuntary thermal regulation. He deleted it. He did not replace it. The deletion felt more accurate than any classification he could currently generate. 6 hours later, the extraction teams confirmed that all survivors had been accounted for. The Class 9 blizzard had escalated to Class 12. Academy documentation would later note that one cadet maintained operational capacity throughout, established combustion in conditions deemed impossible, and vocalized at frequencies matching meteorological patterns that no sensor array had successfully predicted. Varn filed his final report 3 days later from the observation deck of his return transport. It contained one line that his superiors flagged for review. Instructor error reclassified. The Flint Striker entered the Academy Museum 6 months later. Its display card read, "Primitive combustion tool, approximately 12,000 years obsolete. Used by Cadet Juno to establish the first fire in Class 12 survival conditions with Materials Academy protocols designated as non-viable." Note: previous instructor assessment of the subject's vocalization as involuntary thermal regulation has been reclassified as superior environmental integration through auditory pattern matching. Varn visited the display once during his second certification course. He stood before the glass case for 11 minutes, watching the light reflect from the striker's polished surface. His joints emitted no harmonic cracking. The room was climate-controlled to optimal Threxian parameters. He remained motionless until another instructor asked whether he required medical assistance. He did not. He was listening to the ventilation system, trying to identify whether its frequency cycles matched any pattern he could learn to predict. Above them, the dark ship continued its silent orbit, steel and shadow against an empty sky.